Okay, well, it's 6 o'clock. Sharon, do you want to kick us off?
All right. Sounds good. So let me pull up the PowerPoint and get started. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank all the attendees for taking the time out of your busy day to join city staff on this very important topic as we look at the South Main Street properties that the city owns. So let me go on to the next slide. Just want to do a quick self-introduction here. Members of our team, I'm Sharon Goey, Director of Building Safety and Housing. Adam Marcus is our housing manager. Robert Muslim, our Housing and Neighborhood Service Administrator, and Ethan Walsh, who is also on this call, is from our City Attorney's Office. And this project also involves a lot of collaboration with other city departments, and that includes City Manager's Office, Planning, Economic Development, Fire Prevention, Engineering, and Recreation as well. So it was a really good collaborative effort among city staff. And as you're aware, the purpose is for the city to explore the possible development and or disposition of 3 city-owned parcels on South Main Street. So today, here's our quick agenda. We're going to share information on the background and then look at legal constraints. And then we'll take a look at the key city policies and plans about these parcels, and then pathways of development and guiding principles under consideration. After that, we'll review next steps. And of course, we're going to have time for discussion with you and questions and answer. So here's an aerial map of the site. The 3 parcels are located on South Main Street, north of Cedar Way. So that's the yellow box you see in the middle of the screen. These sites are a short walk from VTA Light Rail Station, the Gray Mall, and the Milpitas Transit Center, or the BART station there. The Pine single-family neighborhood sits to the west of the parcels. A railroad track runs along the eastern edge of the parcels. So that's the red dashed line you see on the screen there. High-density housing has been proposed to the north and south of the city's parcels. Here's a zoomed-in view of the parcels. Caliber Collision sits to the north of the 3 parcels, and Senior Lifestyles Phase 2, this project is south of these 3 parcels. And we'll refer to the northernmost of the parcels as Parcel 1. This parcel is owned by the Milpitas Housing Authority. Parcels 2 and 3 are owned by the city. And as you can see, they're all just under 1 acre each. And here's some background information about the parcels. They were assembled prior to 2014, and it's during the redevelopment agency days around 2011. The purpose was to aggregate land for higher density affordable housing or mixed income housing development. Parcel 1 is owned by the Milpitas Housing Authority as the successor agency, and this parcel is subject to redevelopment agency law as a result. As a minimum, the city must develop or dispose of this parcel by summer 2022. Parcels 2 and 3 are owned by the city. They are not subject to the redevelopment law or the time limit we just mentioned. The city is exploring options that either separate or combine these parcels. There are currently 11 non-residential tenants and 1 residential tenant on these sites. And together, these parcels present a unique opportunity to develop this piece of land that's a transit-oriented development. There are a few important legal constraints on these parcels. Parcel 1 is subject to redevelopment agency law, as we mentioned. So the city has to develop or dispose of these parcels by August 31st, 2022. If this parcel is developed separately, it must include 100% affordable housing. If it's sold, it can be developed as market rate housing, and the proceeds must go to the Housing Authority Fund for affordable housing purposes. Parcels 2 and 3 will be subject to the Surplus Land Act, and this act obligates the city to negotiate first on offers to build affordable or mixed income housing. Priority will be required for parcels with 25% affordable units. If no agreements reached under the Surplus Land Act, a residential project will still need a minimum of 15% affordable units for low-income households. There is no state requirement to develop or dispose of parcels 2 and 3, but it may be more efficient if they're combined with parcel 1 for consideration. And if the city elects to develop all 3 parcels together, the Surplus Land Act would add further legal restrictions. Here's a street view of the parcels and the nearby area. Currently, the sites are occupied with single-story commercial uses. Parcel 1 includes outdoor repair, a plumber business, locksmith, cat boarding, and the Milpitas food pantry. Parcel 2 has mostly auto repair, and Parcel 3 has auto repair business as well. This project, it's got the name Mill on Main. It's north of the Caliber Collision parcel. It was entitled already by the city. It has a total of 220 units, a 7-story development, and the developer is currently planning to build affordable workforce housing along with some rapid rehousing units at this location. The developer hosted a community meeting on April 29th and will be seeking from council support to endorse the application for county funding. Westmont Milpitas is what we call the Senior Lifestyles Project. Phase 1 is south of Cedar Way, so that's the portion you see on the right. It has been completed for about 1 year. And Phase 2 is north of Cedar Way, so that's the left portion you see there. That is to be developed, and higher density housing is anticipated to be developed there. Next, I'm going to turn this over to Adam Marcus, our housing manager.
Thank you, Sharon, and good evening, everyone. On this slide, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the city's policies that apply to this site. There's sort of 3 areas we wanted to highlight for you. The first is the TASP, or Metro Specific Plan, which envisions a transit-oriented environment with density, mixed use, and attractive public spaces. This is the area around the BART station. The second is from our housing element, which is a chapter in our general plan. It's our current housing element, which envisions a mix of housing types, tenures, so tenure means ownership or rental housing, and affordability levels throughout the city. And thirdly, we have a policy from our general plan, which was recently updated. The overall plan was recently updated and relates to economic development and the desire to provide high quality work environments and competitive business locations throughout the city. This slide looks at our current housing goals. Some of you may be familiar with the city's regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA for short. So for the period between 2014 and 2022, the city is expected to plan for and do whatever it can to help developers build 3,290 units, and those are different affordability levels. So above moderate is another way of saying market rate. And the column on the right shows our upcoming housing goal, which is about twice as large. And that's not just Milpitas. The entire state is getting much larger housing housing targets for the 2023 to 2031 cycle. So it's really important to understand that the city has to plan room for this much new housing over the next 7 or 8 years. Next slide. And I wanted to make sure to acknowledge that our planning director, Ned Thomas, is here, and he can answer detailed questions around the general plan and our specific plans. But here we wanted to just talk a little bit about the metro specific plan, which is, again, the area around the BART station and to the south, and in this case, a little to the east, or to the west, excuse me. The parcels are currently subject to the city's Midtown specific plan, which was adopted in 2002 and updated in 2010. These parcels have been zoned for R4 multifamily residential for many years now. The city is looking at increasing the density given the site's proximity to the Great Mall, the VTA, and the BART station, and also to shifting these parcels into the metro specific plan out of the Midtown specific plan. The city is looking at 2 primary development options or pathways. Pathway number 1 would pursue a strategy that separates parcel 1 from the others. This could help simplify some of the legal constraints and allow more time to master plan parcels 2 and 3. Pathway number 2 contemplates strategies that combine all 3 parcels and develop them together. Next slide. And this is a study just showing about how much housing could fit on these parcels if they were, in this case, under Pathway 1, developed separately. So parcel 1 on top, and then the larger area below is a combination of parcels 2 and 3. So if there was to only be housing on the site, approximately 260 units of housing could fit there. If there was to be some open space, it would be a little bit less, 250 units. Next slide. And then under Pathway 2, which is treating all 3 parcels together and developing them all together, you can get a little bit more, but not that much more housing units. So about 270, or if you had some retail and some open space, about 260 units of housing. Next slide. And with this, I'm going to hand this over to our Ethan Walsh from our city attorney's office.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, everyone. My name is Ethan Walsh. I'm an attorney with Best and Krieger, and we represent the city as city attorney. So I'm going to touch upon an issue that's been a point of discussion with regard to this project, and that is the relocation obligations with regard to the existing tenants on the site. As Sharon mentioned in the introduction, these properties do have existing tenants, primarily commercial tenants that have businesses that are operating on the property. And so as part of our analysis of looking at this issue and bringing something forward to get direction from the city council, the city's retained a firm called Overland Pacific and Cutler that will help us to research potential tenant relocation obligations that could be triggered in connection with this process. So just as a bit of background to explain and give some context to this issue, California public agencies are required by law under the California Relocation Assistance law, which is located in the government code, and we've provided the location of that on the screen here, and the code of regulations that's adopted by the state of California to provide relocation assistance to displaced people. And as we note here, a displaced person is any person, either a resident or a business, who moves from real property or as a result of the acquisition of real property for public use. And so prior to those businesses or residents actually being displaced, the city is required to provide certain financial assistance to help with the relocation, as well as advisory services to assist those businesses or residents in finding a new location for their home or for their business as part of this process. There are some exceptions to this law, but because we're dealing with this at a very high level, it's not something that I would necessarily get into at this point. And one point that I did want to make clear, from the outset, is that as part of this process, the city is deciding what to do with these properties. As Sharon noted, we are required to sell parcel 1. We aren't necessarily required to sell parcels 2 or 3 at this time, but we're determining whether or not it's appropriate right now. But relocation requirements are only required for public projects. And so if the city were to engage in a public project, and in this case, the most likely one would be the development of affordable housing, which does serve a public purpose and is considered a public project. If we were to do a project like that, and the existing tenants had to move, then we would be required to provide relocation assistance. But it's also a potential option that the city will simply sell the existing property, not as part of a public project, but simply to sell it and take the money to go use for affordable housing elsewhere. If that is the case, that's not considered a public project, and it would not trigger relocation obligations under state law. So if this comes up during the discussion section, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I just wanted to provide that brief overview to give you some context on the issue. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Ethan. And we just have a few more slides before we get to our discussion section. So we'll get to it in just a minute. So for parcel 1, when we went to City Council a few weeks ago, we presented some sort of draft guidelines, and we got some feedback, but we wanted to share some of those principles with you tonight, and maybe get your thoughts on it, because they're not set in stone. They're very kind of preliminary right now. So for parcel number 1, some of the guiding principles are as follows. So keeping the tenants apprised in a timely manner on the proposed disposition of the parcel, disposing of the parcel in accordance with the legal constraints and requirements that Sharon explained, developing higher density housing following the metro specific plan, and developing 100% affordable housing, again on parcel number 1, or using the funds to support other affordable housing projects. If we were to sell it, the proceeds, using those funds to support either a project there on the site or in other parts of the city. And when we say affordable housing, for this particular parcel, it would need to be low income, which is 80% of the area median income or below. Also looking at flexibility in terms of rental and ownership units. We did hear that the council was interested in that flexibility. And if possible, or if it makes sense, trying to find efficiencies in leveraging parcels 2 and 3 in terms of amenities and infrastructure and access. Next slide. And for the parcels 2 and 3, similar but slightly different guiding principles, again, keeping the tenants apprised in a timely manner. But one key difference is retaining land ownership. So since these parcels do not have a clock to dispose or develop them like parcel 1 does, that does offer the city more options. It's a larger piece of land, and there are benefits to holding on to the land in the long term. And of course, also having to follow perhaps different legal requirements if we do end up developing the land in terms of the Surplus Land Act. Looking to maximize the city's return on investment. The city did have to purchase these parcels. So that's something to think about as well. And creating higher density, affordable and market rate housing, again, with the flexibility to build rental and ownership units. And then again, two things that were not on the previous slide that might make sense for these other two parcels is to add some ground floor retail or neighborhood services, dry cleaners, coffee shops, things like that. And in addition, potentially a small park or urban plaza as well. So far, we've had on September 28th, we had a special meeting with the city council. And on October 20th, we met with the tenants. And then on the 28th, we had a community meeting just like this one, where we did the exact same presentation. And here we are tonight. We're going to continue to work on evaluating the input we've received so far, as well as receiving input from our consultant that Ethan mentioned regarding the potential impact on tenants. And we are aiming for returning to the city council in December. We have not yet set a date, but as soon as we do, we'll be sure to get the word out about that. And we'll tell you how to get in touch with us and get onto the mailing list if you'd like to be notified for that meeting. And then, of course, in June, the Metro specific plan will be adopted, and that would apply to these parcels. And in August of next year, that would be the deadline for, again, either disposing of or developing parcel number 1. And so we have a slide of discussion questions, and then we'll show you our contact info, and then we'll do the discussion. So some of the discussion questions that we'd love to hear your input on include the following. So if the city decides to develop housing on these sites, what target populations should this housing serve? And what we mean by target populations are, should it be family housing, workforce housing, senior housing, special needs housing? There's all different types, but what target population do you think would most benefit or would make sense here? How much housing should be affordable versus market rate? Should development include rental, ownership, or both? Should a development include a small park? Should a development include ground floor retail? And is there anything else you'd like to share or ask about? So those are some of the things we would love to hear from you. We'll come back to this slide in a sec. I just wanted to wrap with the final slide, which is how to contact us. So if you would like to be notified of upcoming meetings, in particular the city council meeting, you can email us and we can add you to that notification list so that you're in the loop. And so with that, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. We have a pretty small group tonight, so I think unless we get a lot more people, we probably don't need to worry too much about setting a timer, but we will try to make sure everyone gets to speak once before we take follow-up questions from someone who's already spoken. So with that, if you can, please, if you're not familiar with Zoom, if you can raise your hand in Zoom, and you can go to the bottom of your screen. There should be a little button that says raise hand. And when you press that, that'll tell us that you'd like to speak, and we'll call on you in order as those hands go up. And with that, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Okay, I see our first question here with Dean Bradshaw. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead, Dean.
Hi, I was wondering, has anyone looked at the traffic impacts of how it would impact traffic around there with 270 new units plus the other building that was already proposed? Because as of now, in the mornings, trying to get from Main Street onto Montague, it's a mess. And so just adding more units to it, it's just going to probably make it the impact even worse.
Ned, do you want to field that one?
Sure. Hi, Ned Thomas, the planning director. So, and any project that is built in the city here or elsewhere will have full traffic analysis done. And you know, different people will reach different conclusions about how the traffic analysis is done and whether it's valid for any given location. I'm like you. I've tried to drive down that street in the morning or, you know, during any rush hour, and it's really difficult to get around. You know, not grasping at straws here, but part of the solution is to have fewer people driving in cars. It's one of the reasons why development in this area makes sense, because was pointed out a couple of times, it's within proximity to transit. Now, whether or not the people living in the buildings will actually walk over, you know, walk up to the light rail or to the BART station, or if those two services even take them to places they want to go, is, you know, is a whole other conversation. But that's sort of the principle behind, you know, building more density near the transit center. There's a lot that could be said about that. I usually explain it by saying that, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of public investment, our tax dollars, have gone into building those facilities and will continue to support them in, you know, for decades to come. So part of our work as city planners and the city itself and decision makers is to make sure that those facilities are successful. And one of the ways that we do that is not only building more housing in those areas, but the part of the transit area specific plan, now the metro plan, that's left to be done is to create all those connections, the sidewalks, the pleasant pathways where people want to walk and get out of their cars, or take their bikes and then go to transit. The last thing I'll say is, you know, in addition to all of these housing projects, the city does have a number of very interesting transportation projects underway. One of which we hope to get underway in the new year. We received a $1.3 million grant from the Valley Transportation Authority to implement what will be called Milpitas on demand. And I like to describe it as sort of Uber and Lyft meet your local transit service. So we will have there's a vendor that will have a number of vehicles that are branded for Milpitas. They will serve just the Milpitas area. It's app based, so you will call the service on your app. It probably won't come right to your doorstep, but you'll probably have to walk a block or two. It establishes what we call electronic bus stops all around the city. So instead of like a regular bus that only goes on a fixed route and comes like every 30 minutes or sometimes 40 minutes and only goes to a couple of places, this one will go anywhere in the city to those electronic bus stops. There's kind of like a grid over the entire city. So you can get that transit and take it to either town. It's a pilot project. So in the pilot project, will take you to town center. You can do shopping or come to City Hall, or it will take you to the Milpitas Transit Center or to one of the light rail stops. So the idea is to connect people from their homes and their work to transit. And that's just one of several different ways that we're, trying to address the traffic issue as well as the housing issue with the project that we're talking about, the potential projects that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, it's wishful thinking that get people so that they're not driving and don't have a vehicle. But I live here in the Pines, and we are already experiencing from Apex, from Elara, all the vehicles that are parking in our area and is getting congested over here. Adding all those the new housing, it's just going to get even worse.
Yeah, we've been aware of the parking issues in the Pine. I think you're aware of the city's efforts we've looked at parking pass programs. We've done parking audits for Elara and Apex and the others to see, how are people actually using their buildings. Part of it is a design issue. There were some tenancy issues that we discovered, more people living in a unit than were supposed to be there. So some of those are being addressed, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And the plans that are underway are kind of like we're halfway through the planning period. These are like 20-year plans, and so a lot of the infrastructure to support people walking and biking is not in place yet, and that's why you continue to see, and everyone drives, so that's why you continue to see congestion on our roads. But we're just trying to take steps to address that as much as possible. But totally valid points, yeah. Really.
Okay, thanks, Ned, and thanks, Dean. Are there any additional questions? I don't see, oh, I see a new hand here. We'll go to Guy Haas.
Okay, I've been in the Pines since like 72, no, 82. And I'm wondering if anybody involved in this study actually lives in this neighborhood, because the impacts here have been tremendous. They're isolating us between the freeway and the 4 or 5 story housing, and we're being pushed aside. They're saying, don't you worry your pretty little head about it. We're taking care of everything.
Great. Well, thanks for the comment, Guy. We have another raised hand here, Alan Thomas.
I've unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I had a question. It appears that location number 1 has a time frame which is going to end in August of next year. I attended a turning meeting this last week where the city is working with someone, and we're talking about multiple months of transitioning a property that already exists into affordable housing. How is it possible that you're going to turn a blank slate into affordable housing in 10 months?
Maybe Ethan can take that in terms of timeline.
Sure, I can discuss the timeline. So essentially what we are required to do by August of 2022 is we either need to initiate the development of the property as affordable housing, or we need to initiate the sale of the property, just straight up sale to a market buyer who then can do whatever they want with it, subject obviously to the city's land use requirements. So I think the key term there is that we have to initiate that process by that date. It doesn't mean that it will be completed by that date. So by August of 2022, we either need to have selected a developer that we would work with to transition the property to them so that they could develop, but then that would be a gradual process. As you know, affordable housing takes a long time to develop because there's issues with financing and issues with kind of applying for public funds and that type of thing. So it would take some time. So we either need to make that decision and have a developer that we're willing to work with by August of 2022, or else be marketing the property for sale just on the open market by that time. So essentially that's a decision point, but it's not a date by which we would have the process completed. As you know, that would take considerably more time.
I have a follow-up to the same question.
Go ahead.
If the property were sold to a developer, they would have to develop it within the transit specific plan, meeting the density housing requirements for the city already. So what would be the advantage of the city developing it versus selling the property and having somebody else develop it within the plan that already exists?
So the key with the city, so the city wouldn't develop it. We would convey it to a developer. But if we were doing it specifically for affordable housing, then we would sell it with conditions on that property. And the difference there is for affordable housing, we include requirements that the people who live there have, like, document that their income is at a fixed level, that's, as Adam noted, is 80% of the area median income or below. But if a developer were simply to develop it based on the existing land use requirements, the transit area specific plan, they would have to develop it at specific densities, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be available for people at a specific income level. So that's the difference between the two.
If I were to make a recommendation, I would recommend that it be sold and that the profits go to the redevelopment as necessary, and that this property be developed according to the transit specific plan that's already in place.
May I make one additional comment? It's somewhat related. It's a little bit tangential. So currently, as Adam noted, this project is part of the Midtown specific plan, a separate specific plan. But the idea is to it will be annexed or transitioned into the Metro Plan area. One of the reasons that we want to do that is that the transit area, the Metro Plan, has an impact fee that is attached to every unit that is built. So when the private developer builds that project, each unit that they will pay, right now the fee is set at a little over $40,000 per unit that is paid into a fund, an infrastructure fund that goes toward paying for the new streets, sidewalks, roads, bicycle infrastructure, parkland, and other public facilities. So right now, we would not, because it's in the Midtown plan that does not have that same impact fee attached to it, we would not accrue that revenue to pay for the needed infrastructure, both along Main Street as well as other parts of the metro area. So that's one of the benefits. I just wanted to bring that up as one of the benefits of bringing it into the Metro Plan area, as opposed to leaving it where it is.
All right, thanks, Ned. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands at the moment. Oh, I now see another hand. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Franchetta. Francette, excuse me. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just want to come back to the last question. When, the city decided to sell parcel 1. Actually, I don't have any interest and I'm not a tenant along those 3 parcels at all. What I would like to find out is, since the relocating, whatever you call it, relocation assistance law does not apply when the city sells parcel 1. Is there anything the city can do to help with the existing tenants when they get displaced?
Eden, do you want to respond?
Sure. So just to be clear, if we sell parcel 1 just on the open market so that we can get the maximum proceeds that we would then use for affordable housing elsewhere, then yes, I don't believe we would be legally required to provide relocation assistance. That doesn't mean the city couldn't look at potential, avenues that we could take to facilitate some sort of assistance with the tenants in the event that they were, forced to move from the property. That's really a policy decision that the city will have to make. There are potentially some options there, but it would not be a legal requirement for us to do that.
Can I follow up? Can I speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
I actually would like to have the city staff consider whatever options that the city could bring into the negotiation with a buyer on the open market, because I heard a little bit earlier that someone could put a condition on the sale of the parcel 1 and require a certain percentage for affordable housing. I think that along that that line, I think the city, in consideration of the existing tenants, and again, I have no interest in any of those parcels. I'm not an existing tenant in any of those 3 parcels. I'm just, just bring up the issue because I think that those tenants would need some help when the law is not required to protect them. I think to do the right thing would help a lot in the goodwill of the city going forward with this wonderful plan, the metro plan. So that's my point.
Thank you, Francette, for that comment. Okay, any other, I don't see any hands raised at the moment, but we have time if anyone else has questions or comments to make. I see Steve Roberts. Go ahead and unmute you, Steve. Go ahead.
Hi guys. So I was wanted to touch on what Francette said about the is there a way to impose, like, an impact fee that would benefit the tenants in case they are displaced or they cannot move, like, to the other parcels. But what I had suggested in the last meetings was to move the tenants in parcel 1s to the vacant spots in parcels 2 and 3, if that would be possible. I think that would be not too difficult of a move for them. But also, I guess one of the biggest things that I had is I understand that there's a plan going on, but if parcels 1, 2, and 3 do get sold as a unit and we're all in jeopardy of being displaced, and say they sell it to a developer and then the developer basically decides to not help any of us, are we just kind of out on our own at that point?
Ethan, do you want to respond?
Sure, I can try to. I mean, as to your last question, Steve, I mean, I think it really depends on the facts. It depends on what we sell the property for, and what the terms of the sale are. If it's for affordable housing, then we are legally required to provide the relocation assistance. If we just sell it outright, then there's no legal requirement for us to provide relocation assistance. I'm not saying that we've made a decision on what we would do under those circumstances, but there is no legal requirement under that. So, I'm not sure if that totally helps you out, but that's kind of all I can say at this point in the process.
Okay. Did you have anything else, Steve? Or
Yeah, I don't know if I'm unmuted. Am I muted or?
no, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so and then I was also because I remember when the Ula Lodge was there, and also that mobile home park, and then they bought the land to develop that. That land stayed empty for almost a decade, if not more. And I'm thinking of where my business is located in parcel 3. If it decides to get sold or developed, are they just going to clear that land, and then all that potential time where we could still be running a business before they decide to build would just kind of, I guess, go away? Because I also noticed that I think the project's called Mill on Main. You had the first years, and then you had the used to be the guest house years and years ago. I don't know, it was a Indian restaurant after that, but those businesses could have continued to operate for years before anything's really been done on it. And it's just kind of a waste or a shame that we offer these services to the community for them to just shut them down when they could still be operating all the way up until maybe the day they start to break ground. I guess other than that, that's all I really had to say.
Great, thanks, Steve. I've made a note there of your question about is there any way that to kind of maximize the amount of time if the land was sold for businesses to operate. So I did take note of that. I don't know the answer, but we'll definitely include that in our summary to the city council as something that that you've suggested. Okay, I don't see any other hands at the moment, but I can. We're happy to stick around for a little bit longer if anyone else has any questions. Again, just a reminder, if you'd like to be notified of the city council meeting when that's scheduled, you can email us. We'll put the housing email back up on the screen here in a minute. That's the best way, and once we have your email, and we can send that out to you. And we're more than welcome. If there's other folks that you think would want to be notified, then feel free to have them email as well. We're happy to just add whoever is interested.
I think Ned wanted to
Ned?
make an announcement.
Oh, sorry, Ned.
That's okay. If
Go
you don't
ahead.
mind, since we have a group of engaged residents here, I thought I would take the opportunity to let them know that the Milpitas Metro Plan that we've been talking about tonight, staff and the council and the consultants have been working on that for a little over the past year. And we recently released the draft plan. So it's not a finished product yet, but if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that plan, possibly reading through the draft, it's available on the project website. It's really easy, just Milpitas Metro, all one word, milpitasmetro.org. And right now there's a survey, a community survey that's going on. I think it was going to close today. I think we kept it open for a few more weeks, or a few more days, excuse me. But if you want to take the survey and after you read through the plan, provide us a little bit of feedback, it would be really valuable to us. I believe our consultants are offering a $25 gift card if you take the survey. So, and you know, I'll let you know that it's secret. We haven't had a lot of responses, so your chances are very good at winning the $20 gift card. I don't know if they have more than one, but they did that as a kind of as an incentive to get people to respond to the survey. So I'll just mention again, milpitasmetro.org.
Yeah, Ned, I think the deadline is November 8th.
Okay, yeah, I think that's when we moved it to 8. So great, thanks.
Thanks, Ned. Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions, we'd love to give you 15 minutes back to your evening, and so you can be free to go. Thanks again for your time and for attending, and we hope that you can join us at the council meeting in December once that's been scheduled. So again, thank you for your time. Have a good evening.